Welcome, everyone. Glad you're here.
What we're going to talk about is basically embracing remote learning you know, how we're doing this in TI. Today is a great day to have this presentation because we found out today that we are definitely going to be home for the remainder of the school year. So how does this look for the next 4 or 5 weeks, etc. So what we're going to talk about is I'm going to go through the federal guidance that we've gotten from various different entities and agencies. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about what you can do now, and then we'll go through some helpful education tips, just stuff that I do at home, etc. I am a special education attorney. My office is in Fort Thomas, Kentucky, which is up here near Cincinnati. I'm up here near Cincinnati. I practice statewide in Kentucky, and I would go statewide in Ohio if the need arose. So that's what I do. I'm also the mom to a little guy that has Down syndrome. His name is Jack. He is 9. I don't update pictures very often, but I think you can see him over my shoulder right here. That's when he was a toddler. So I'm in this with you guys. I'm doing the exact same thing that you guys are doing. I've been given a little caveat because I am a retired teacher. I taught before I went to law school, and I rest by doing stuff. So my first couple of conversations with clients, I felt like I was overwhelming clients with information and opportunity and excitement. This is hard. This is extremely hard on all of us, on teachers, on related service professionals, and on, hi Paul, and on our kids. And it's hard on us as parents. It's extremely hard. So the caveat is, just because I'm talking about kind of best practices and the way that I'm recommending to do things does not mean that that should be done every single day, day in and day out, because I don't think that that is sustainable. So don't feel the pressure of this like perfect, oh, I got to do it this way. Okay, so current situation. This has changed significantly. I updated this, I think maybe Saturday, and it is now totally different. So most states in the union have canceled school for the remainder of the academic year because the federal guidance was such that it was nearly impossible, if not impracticable, for schools to reopen. Most schools, just in case you're curious, across the country are doing some kind of non-traditional instruction. You know, there's a lot that plays into that, socioeconomics and the use of technology, the availability of technology, et cetera. The one kind of interesting thing that I'll say is, in Fort Thomas, our kids district-wide got some kind of technology 5 school years ago. And I remember being, as a former teacher and then as a parent of a kid that does very well in school, and then a kid on an IEP who also does well in school. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I am so concerned about this. Like, my kids read, we limit their television time. I do not want technology in my house like that, and I don't want them staring at a screen all day long. And to think that that was so new age and so different in that just 5 years ago, and now the fact that every student in America should have a computer within the next week is just crazy to me. So you know, things have changed significantly for lots of reasons. So what has the federal government said? We've got guidance documents from the Office of Civil Rights, from the Office of Special Education Rehabilitation Services, and from the HHS. And what these do is they tell school districts what school districts should be doing. So I've just kind of summarized them. If anybody's interested in the links, my contact information's on the last slide, and you can email me. I will send you the links to this stuff. I've got a lot on my Facebook page for my office, which we might flip over and look at as well, which kind of summarizes this stuff. The links are on there. So if you, want to follow that, you are more than welcome to do so. So the first thing that, and I started putting these in order, but then I don't know that they actually follow order, like March 12th, and then we found out this on March 16th or whatever. But the summary is that civil rights and website accessibility rules have to be followed. So if your child has needs like a larger font or needs things that most of you have littler kids, so you're going to be helping immensely. But middle schoolers that need things read to them, for example, if a website, if NTI is supposed to be delivered on a website and it doesn't have the availability to read to the child and the child is used to getting that, then that's not the right program for that child. So we need to make sure that every piece of NTI is accessible to each child, no matter what. Schools have to continue to provide a free, appropriate public education during closures. Obviously, that is important. There is a lot of guidance that existed on school closures prior to this pandemic. So natural disasters occur, like the fires in California, hurricanes in Florida. Those things happen and will close down schools for weeks, if not months. And so there's a fair amount of guidance by way of case law, guidance documents from state governments, and then lots of guidance from federal agencies that predated this COVID pandemic. Related services also have to continue. So PT, OT, speech, music therapy, all of those things have to continue despite the fact that schools are closed. Schools have to evaluate the use of any kind of instruction that is not in person. So online, telephone, virtual learning, etc. The very first guidance talked about the difference between a change of place, this 10 days or less and then 10 days or more, no longer applicable. And all that it did was, if you're only going to be closed for 10 days, then, and this might be applicable next year, so that's why I'm explaining it. If a school's going to be closed for less than 10 days, probably not a change of placement. Probably just like, we got to close, and so we don't really have to do anything. If you're going to be closed longer than 10 days, it does trigger a change of placement, which means that children's rights are still there and still need to be protected. So, of course, now we're all closed longer than 10 days. Students and parents are to use the rule that's in all this federal guidance is flexibility. In my office, we call it reason. We just have to be reasonable. I advise my clients to be reasonable at all times, no matter what, no matter what's going on. So that is no different for me than, than it is any other time. But what that means is, that we need to, we can't expect minute for minute education. We can't expect everything to be the exact same. We have to say, okay, well, maybe that'll work, or maybe we're going to postpone that and revisit it, etc. And we'll come up with a lot of examples as we go through this. Meetings, IEP meetings, ARC meetings, and evaluations are still to occur, so long as that's practicable. If there's like with an evaluation, if we're filling out the parent surveys, we can do that remotely. If it's an observation that has to happen, we obviously can't do that. Students on IEPs have to have access to the gen ed curriculum. If you're not getting access to what your child's peers are doing in general education, you need to ask for access to that. You can also ask for modifications and accommodations in order to access that in a way that's meaningful to your child. Um, the we all have different thresholds, right? Like I have decided that I don't want access to gen ed. I think it could give me a really great glimmer of insight into what happens in gen ed and how they modify for gen ed. But to me, that's a lot. We are like rocking it out on our IEP goals and on our own little routine that we're set up at my house. And that is too much for me. I actually really looked forward to this third grade lesson on part of the third grade curriculum is like the water cycle and this like kind of cool weather unit, and they do this cool cloud thing. And I was like, oh, that's really functional. My kid would totally love that, and he would learn that, and that's important, and it helps him appreciate nature and stuff. And it's happening right now. And I'm like, nope, we're not going outside to take pictures of clouds. Like we can't. We're making 3 meals a day here. Like that's what we're doing. We're not looking at the clouds. So let's see. There's a supplemental fact sheet from OSERS, and it does provide a list of regulations relative to the timelines. Basically, all timelines stay in effect with flexibility. And then it used to say, and I include this because there was a lot of hype when it was coming out, it used to say that if schools are closed to everybody, then there's no need to provide any education under IDEA. I did not hear from any client or potential client that a district in Kentucky was suggesting that. It's happening statewide in Virginia and Pennsylvania, for example. It's happening in other places. And it actually never was stated someplace. It was something that people implied, and the federal government came out and said definitively that's not true. And there's actually a federal Dear Colleague letter that speaks to that from a hurricane in Florida. So that's what we know from the federal government. Now, COPA is the Council of Parents, Attorneys, and Advocates. COPA is probably the leading organization for parents and students with disabilities in school. And COPA said, okay, so COPA reacted to this. COPA really teased out the 10-day closure thing. COPA also says that internet and phone-based instruction should be explored, should be obviously implemented with flexibility, but that we can't just kind of skirt around that and say, well, we don't have access to this, we don't have access to that. I see on Facebook really, really often a friend of mine who is educated through a storm door because that's the way that meets that child's learning profile. And I just think that's like the coolest thing ever. It's not technology. It is like everything shy of human touch, and it's happening through a storm door. I'm sitting here looking out the front window of my home. I told clients that need to sign a will. Kentucky hasn't updated anything relative to will signing. And I said, I will literally put a table on the other side of my window, and I'll put a rock on your documents so they don't blow away after you pull up, and you can sign them in my presence. And I think that is sufficient to meet the Kentucky statute for will execution. So we're getting creative about stuff, and I think that's really important. IEP meetings should continue and can be done electronically via telephone, video conferencing, et cetera. COPA has said that. They said that early before the federal government had really said that explicitly. So we've got that guidance as well. That's on COPA's website. The rest is on federal websites. So what does that mean then? I have to keep, this is moving because I have to keep moving you guys, like your pictures, around on my screen so that I can see the words that I'm saying. So what does FAPE look like at home? What does our appropriate education look like at our houses? And I think the most important thing to note is that it's going to look different. I mean, something that I keep kind of struggling with is I have to be a third grade boy. Like I have to laugh when my kid toots. I have to play Foursquare. Um, and I have to be the cafeteria lady and like remind him that he has to take his tray up when he's finished. We aren't going to lose that independence skill. I have to, one of my son's IEP goals is about requesting items from a peer. I literally have to be a peer. And I say to his 13-year-old brother, okay, we're going to make chocolate chip cookies. And Jack, here's your list of ingredients and your prompt. Can I please have the? And then, my 13-year-old has to kind of prompt him and act like a third grader. And so, we have to fill all of these roles because school isn't just IEP goals. School is so much more than IEP goals. And so it's going to look different. We can't, I'm not going to laugh at toots very much. Although my kid did say who is tooting and he has a present progressive verb goal. So I think that's really great, even though it should have been past tense. But that's the problem with muting you. You don't laugh. I don't know that you're laughing at my funny toot jokes. I'll laugh. So I know you're laughing. I can see you. But it's going to look different, and that is okay. We have to be flexible. Like I said at the beginning, my child does not do well on Zoom phone calls or we do FaceTime. He does terribly. Like the first couple of times he really surprised me. He took the teachers all over the house, showed them everything in our basement. That was when the house was still clean. So I didn't really care. And now it is awful. And his special ed teacher calls right at the beginning of the day. And it just sets us up for this, like, no, stop, come over here. I got to pick you up and corral you and put you over here. And so today I said, can we please try not talking in the morning? And we had a great day. I don't know. I don't have enough data to suggest that that's a pattern. But we have to continue to say this is not working or this is working really well, and can we increase or decrease things. We also have to be flexible on how we're learning. So my child has, and I talk about my kids so much because I can't really talk about clients. I can hypothetically and I can with permission. So sometimes I give examples about clients, but I know I can tell you about Jack Barlow because I am allowed to, even if my husband doesn't. So he has Orton Gillingham reading instruction. It says research-based multisensory reading instruction, and it's to be done with fidelity, which is 90 minutes a week in his case. And he's not going to get that. And I don't know that I'm going to ask for any compensation as a result of that, because I think he's going to probably make great progress in reading. I'm doing it differently. But at the beginning of NTI, which we started a little bit early because I kept him home a little bit sooner because of some risks that we knew of and his own health profile. So we've been at this for 6 weeks, and I said, I'm not going to try Orton Gillingham. Like, I'm not going to get trained in OG in the next 2 weeks, right? And then I had some questions about, well, how do I do this? And do you have a prompt for this? And how do I make this multisensory? And the more and more the teachers helped me, the more I realized, oh, well, just tell me how you do it. And we're doing something that's very similar to the way that the teachers were teaching him to read. And I use flexibility to kind of up the ante on myself as his teacher in order to give him more support. So, you can ditch stuff, you can add stuff, you can change stuff around, etc. So compensatory education, you've probably heard a lot about it. What does it mean? So basically, if a child is not making progress, or if a child misses a skill altogether, then we can get compensatory education. The federal government has come out and said that if either of those two things happen, you will be entitled to compensatory education. So what does that look like? Sometimes it looks like a district saying, yeah, we agree and we need to give you extra. So it might be more instruction delivered in after school hours, delivered in summer hours, delivered on the weekends, etc. So you might get the occupational therapist on Saturdays at your house or at school working on visual perception because your child had a significant regression in visual perception during this time period. Another way that it happens is money. So we see that a lot in dyslexia cases where kids will completely regress in reading or will be in 8th grade and reading at a 2nd grade level. And we'll say they aren't making progress and you've got an obligation to have them make progress. So give me this amount of money and I'm going to take it and go get a reading tutor that's certified in Orton Gillingham or Barton or something to provide that instruction. So when are we going to see that? We're going to see it, like I said, with reading programs now. Like I said, I think my particular kid is going to make progress. But if your child is supposed to get Orton Gillingham or Barton and is not getting it, that's really hard to deliver at home when you aren't certified to teach it. There's also other therapies that require lots and lots of training to implement. And so, the one I keep thinking about is that spider therapy, where you've probably seen it in your physical therapist office, where like they, the children get attached to these really cool kind of like bungee cord looking things. And it gives lots of good proprioceptive input and it helps with motor planning and that kind of stuff. If a school was offering that, there's no way that that would be able to be delivered at home. So you would get extra time or extra services if that was in your IEP. So I would fully expect that everybody would be entitled to some kind of compensatory education. We obviously have no gauge on what the state is going to say is reasonable, and honestly on how much we want to push for it. So I think it's reasonable. I think everybody's is going to be on a case-by-case basis. So what should I do to protect my child's rights? Be flexible, be reasonable. We've talked about those things. Consider the issue from the teacher's lens. I have said that 1,000 times. We have to look at everything from the other person's perspective and think, is that even possible? And can they even do that? I'll pull up in a little while, probably my son's goals. And I don't know, I think he's got like 9 goals total with all the benchmarks, maybe like 18 or 20 things upon which they have to take data. And my kid's teacher has a caseload that's close to 15. So even if she only has to take data on 10 data points per child per week, that could be 150 data points a week. And that means that she also has to plan lessons for 150 unique goals. That is a crazy amount of instruction. And yeah, that's not all for the resource teacher. Sometimes the OT supports a goal or the PT takes data or something like that. But oh my goodness, I mean, that is a lot of work for these folks. And now they're having to figure out how to do it without their books, without their manipulatives, without their stuff. They're having to send us links to websites and print stuff off and drop it on our front porches. And so, we have to look like, if I'm going to ask for something else, then I am going to have to frame it in a way that makes sense to them. In addition to that, if I'm going to ask for something to be lessened, I have to look at their concerns, right? Like today when I said, can we try not talking today? I thought, my God, I mean, she misses Jack as much as we miss her. And so, we need to feed her soul and let her see him. If there's one thing I can tell you right now, I would say communicate, communicate, communicate. So we're going to talk about kind of steps about what to do today as I understand it, in Fayette County, you guys are on the first day of the 2nd week, right? So like now you're really digging in. So what's this look like? If you have any questions, you have any concerns, you realize that you need something, that something's missing, that something's wrong, write it in an email in writing and send it. That is really important. Document, document, document. So everything should be written in an email. If you have a meeting, make sure you get a conference summary. That's a prior written notice, PWN. In Ohio, they call them PRO1s. But make sure that everything that you agree to in a meeting is documented. Do not leave a meeting ever without reading that conference summary. Really dig in and think about how your child's doing right now. Like tonight, take 20 minutes and think, how are we doing? What is going on? I want for you to read the entire IEP document. And then I want for you to think of better ways to reach your child's needs. So here's the IEP, and what can I do to reach my child differently? If your district recommends something that you don't agree with, then obviously check first. I would check state guidance, then I would check the federal government's guidance and see if it complies with that. Something else, just advocacy wise, I think, you know, we're getting the that stimulus money's coming in. None of that was earmarked for special education specifically. It's going to come to special ed, of course, but it's not specific. So you might look at some organizations that are doing some advocacy for that, like COPA. And then I think most importantly, the thing that we have to do, is we have to be calm. So I just read a book, actually, it's right here. This is the advantage of being in my home office. I wonder if I get like money for being, I'm not paid to do this. The book is called Untamed, and it's by Glennon Doyle. And she has a paragraph in here, and the end of it is serve the peanuts. So and the gist of it is, when you're on an airplane and something like you experience turbulence or something, the first thing you do is look at the flight attendant. Because if the flight attendant is upset, then you know that it's an emergency. If they're just serving the peanuts, then you're like, oh, everything must be fine, right? And so our kids are looking at us right now to see how we're reacting to today's news, to see how we are embracing this NTI business, how we're embracing mom and dad both being home all day, and siblings interacting with one another, and no sports and all of that. And what we need to do for our kids is we need to just keep serving those peanuts. We need to just stay even keel as much as we can, which is definitely easier said than done. Chamomile tea, that's a first step. So ready, set, teach. First thing I think you should do is set up a learning space. Tonight, if you haven't done it, set up a learning space. I presented this before, and I brought in my little cart. I went before we closed everything, like literally my last trip was to Penn Station, which you'll appreciate, and then to Michael's. And I just bought new colored pencils, new crayons, new markers, because I thought that would make it fun. I keep a little cart by our kitchen table. It has that stuff. It has, I don't know, maybe 15 books that we circulate through our easy readers. It has all my stuff for my teachers, my speech therapist, all of that stuff that I need. Like, they've brought me tiles to practice the clock and that kind of stuff. So that way it's all there. And then at the end of the day, it can all go away so that the kitchen is the kitchen again. And so that's how I do it. But I think it's really important for kids to have a workspace. You know, at school, now they do have some alternate seating, which if your kid likes change, then change. If your kid doesn't like change, then you need the consistency of being at the table. So I set out every morning all of our supplies. So what I do is every morning, and I've got some examples of this on my Facebook page, I write our schedule. Like, Jack is used to having this social schedule. And so you know what I'm talking, a visual schedule. He doesn't need it visual anymore. He can read it. So I write out, like, we start every day with calendar and weather. I write it down. Then he tells me everything. I write it down. Then we read that paragraph. And I say stuff like, welcome spring, or, you know, we've been in school 785 days. That's what it feels like. And then we do a journal. So I just think of something to write, or I Google something if I'm really brain dead. And then, you know, he writes a journal about it, and we do that together. And so, but he's got a schedule that says calendar and weather, journal, reading, 1, 2, 3. Oh, we do quick practice because he needs a lot of rote practice. So our quick practice is some finger spelling stuff. It's funny, I just heard a kid and I was like, did he wake up? My husband is running wills to clients for me. So I was like, whoa, what are we going to do? Jack's awake. So we do some quick practice. Then we do reading. Then we do math, 1, 2, 3. And then we do spelling, 1, 2. And then we do speech. And then we have lunch. And then in the afternoon, we do a couple things with our brother. So I write all that down. I set that all out so that he can see it, because it's important for him to get to see it. It feels like a school too. Write down all of your child's IEP goals and then anything that you want to work on. I think that's really, really important. So I will back out of here really quick to show you, I thought it was called, let me see. I should have had this up before. So this is, I just made a new one of these guys. But what I did, this used to be on paper and I was dissatisfied with it on paper. So you can see I didn't even fill in everything from last week. Do as I say, not as I do. I did this, it just is on paper still. So I wrote down all of his benchmarks. And then I wrote down how I'm going to take data. So I wrote down the Wednesdays, and I did take data on Wednesday and Thursday of last week. Those are like his hot days. So that way I know that I need to test him on those particular points. Some things for him are tested every other week, so I put X's so that I know that I don't have to test him that particular week. But in addition to that, it also gave me kind of a checklist to make sure that the teachers had given me instruction on everything that I was supposed to be teaching him on. And then if you want more stuff on his like gen ed stuff, or a special area class like music or something, then you can ask for that also. So I think that's important. Then let's go back to our slideshow. And from the, see, now I gotta move you guys over so I can go to from the current slide. It's not seamless, I tell you, but you gotta be flexible. From current slide, voila. Okay. Make sure you have all the materials. If you do not know about the website Teachers Pay Teachers, it is super inexpensive. Teachers have developed things. Here's something on my home desk right now that's like money practice. So these are going through, I have a laminator because I'm that big of a dork. So these are going through the laminator, and like we're going to figure out how much money all of this is, and then we're going to put a paper clip on one of these things. They're for centers, but we can do it at home, and he'll be able to work independence at home. Work on that at home independently. I don't know what, this place is such a mess, but you know, that's a great website. You can just make stuff, also get it all ready. Then develop a schedule that works for you guys. I've had a lot of my clients say, Ashley, how am I supposed to fit in work and everything else? Here's the way it works for me. From 8 o'clock in the morning until noon, Jack and I do work. And then we eat lunch. And then after lunch, Griffin keeps Jack for a little while, our big brother. I actually make them a little bit of a schedule, like they have stuff that they have to check off. And that way I can work. And then you see the deep breath, because this is not perfect. And then we do some like late afternoon stuff, then dinner, and then that's when my husband takes over with Jack. Now, Of course, you know, like I can't say to everybody, well, I work now from 1 until 3. Like it doesn't work that way. But for my particular child, he does okay with just a little bit of a change of schedule. So if on Wednesday I have to take a call at 10, or I have to, you know, he has a doctor's appointment at 11:15, then he's okay with that. So everybody's different. If your jobs don't accommodate that, then you got to fit it in when you fit it in. Like it's different. It's literally different for everybody. But I do think the one thing to make sure that you're aware of is that kids are used to following a schedule. Schools are very, very scheduled. And so I think that's really important. And then organize everything so that you can access it daily, which we've already talked about. And I think that's important. How do I set it up to look like a school? Like I said, you know, we are the everything in the school, and we can say jokes about that, like I'm the janitor. But like, seriously, don't forget that they've got a relationship with the janitor. So we need to be like, is aware as we can about setting up an environment for them that feels organic and feels homey, because it's not going to be the same, but also has the structure of school and the parts of school that work for them. So I think consistency is really important. If you try to mix it up, you are going to have trouble. And don't forget, this is really short term, hopefully really short term. So I don't think we need to have a whole lot of pressure to like get it done right, you know. Be organized, we talked about that. Mix it up a little to make it fun. Kids are used to a lot of fun, but then like not too much, because they also like structure. So you know, if our kids have taught us anything, it's that you never know what's going to work. So always have something next to do. Be silly, colorful, creative, but also be on task. Now, some children are really great at like coloring for 45 minutes. Jack has a friend who has right now a virtual babysitter. And I kid you not, they put an iPad on the table and the babysitter has baked with them, has colored with them, has done a puzzle with them, has done played games. I'm like, oh, yeah, you should come to my house. So like, you know, be on task. If your kid will color for 4 hours, then that's awesome. Fine motor, like let them color. That's amazing. So, you know, again, that's different for everybody. But don't forget to add crafts, celebrations. Like they didn't get St. Patrick's Day at school. They didn't get the first day of spring. Don't forget that at schools we do that stuff. So hop on Pinterest, Google something, make, I don't think I've got, oh, we're doing some like, I don't think I've got anything within view, but we're like doing some watercolor stuff. I mean, just, I don't know, just like go on and search kindergarten, fine motor, or, you know, that kind of stuff. And I do share a lot on my Facebook page as well. But, you know, just kind of look at including all of those things, because that's important for our kids to get. And it breaks it up a little, makes it fun. Don't forget they're used to seeing their stuff all over the place. So your refrigerator or that bulletin board or whatever would be a great place to put that stuff. Talk to friends. They miss their friends. So talk to friends on the phone or FaceTime or whatever. Set expectations. That's, you know, I think something that like we call it mama school, and we've got our schedule and we've got our rules and we know what they are. We're consistent, and that yields results. So encourage independence. Like that's, I think that's a really big one, particularly with kids, our kids' ages. And the majority of people when we were starting had littler kids. But even for older kids, like here's the deal is they now have a one-on-one teacher. And so I don't want for Jack, like Jack, I think it's probably muscle tone, but he likes for me to put my hand over top of his hand when he writes. I don't move his hand anymore. So it's not hand over hand. He just likes the proprioceptive input. And I'm like, dude, I mean, he has a one-on-one, but I don't want somebody literally holding his hand at school. So I've had to say things like, Jack, I'm not allowed. Your teacher doesn't want for me to do that. I can't do it right now. I'm testing you, and stuff like that, because I don't mind helping him if that's what he needs. But, you know, there's balance, because I don't want him to lose his independence. And then we talked about all of the roles that you are filling. Here are just a couple of websites. Tracy will make this available to you. I'll share the, excuse me, the PowerPoint with her, and she can publish it for you or email it to you or whatever. But Teachers Pay Teachers, we talked about. Go Noodle is phenomenal. If you aren't on Go Noodle, it's just great movement breaks. They're super fun. Our favorite is one called Popsico. And then there is like the Kids Bop Kids do dances that if you watch it like 3 days in a row, you will be able to do the dances, and they're fun. I have to do the low impact dances. I'm not gonna act like I'm some kind of crazy person. I don't leave the ground, but it's fun. Sometimes it's fun to switch up the learning environment. Like we had a tent in our TV room the first week or second week. Go to bedroom, like we've read to stuffed animals, include siblings, that kind of stuff. And then there's a couple other websites. Some are new because of this, and they're kind of fun too. The last thing I'll say is a lot of us, we learn this in First Steps, and I think we kind of like lose it as life goes on. But don't forget to include those like kind of motivating or fun things that our kids like in their learning. So just as an example, like what does your kid like? My kid likes Nerf guns. What's he need to learn? So maybe it's subtraction. So how can I marry Nerf guns and subtraction? Maybe I give him a bunch of problems, and he solves the problem over here, and then he has to shoot the answer. And I've got numbers up on the wall, and he's shooting like, is it 13 or 16? It's 13. Good job, you got that one right. And that just makes it a little bit more fun for him than just like writing 13 or coloring it blue, which makes it even more awful because he hates to color. So, you know, however that works, our therapists do that with our kids, and it's magic for them. Okay, taking data at home. I think it's really, really, really important to take data at home. Now that's like everybody take a deep breath, because that's stressful to people. The reason why is because of that comp ed. So we say data drives instruction. We need to know if they're doing well or if they're not doing well to figure out if we need to change something. Not that you really have that responsibility right now. But then in addition to that, if you have a comp ed claim, it's going to be stronger if you've got data to support it. So I'll tell you how I do it. Again, go into the IEP, write down all the benchmarks. I showed you what mine looks like. Then go to your last progress report and look at the data. So I'm sure I had his, yeah, so organized. This is my kids, this is not somebody else's. So your data sometimes will come to you in a chart like this, and you can look and see where they were on their last data point. So in this one, he was at 80% on whatever it was. And so I would go in and say 80%. So when he was at school, he was at an 80%. If this goal, whatever it is, goes down to a 60 by the end of NTI, then he has regressed. So either I've done a bad job, he's done a bad job, the environment isn't right, whatever, but he might be entitled to some compensation, whether that's extra time or money or whatever, as a result of that. So go in and put in your last report, and that's a baseline. Now, if you've got a new IEP, that's going to be different, but you still have a right to make progress on your IEP, and that continues with flexibility, my word reason, in a reasonable manner during NTI. Test your child. So consider keeping videos. What we do is we have like the napkin holder on the front of the, in the center of the kitchen table, and I set my phone up on the napkin holder. And I do this all the time, not just during NTI. So it just sits like that. I put it in selfie mode. I hit the video. I try to keep them to like 2.5, 3 minutes. That way we've got them. You might even, if you really want to get organized about it, make like little folders in your computer so that you can drag in, like you could call it like you would want to label it so that you can keep them in order. 2020 0420, that would be April 20th. And then drop that into the like stays on task for 10 minutes folder or something like that. I don't do that. That's a lot of work in my opinion. If I need to find them, I will find them. Continue testing on the frequency shown on the IEP. So is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it every 2 weeks, etc.? Communicate that to schools so that they've got an opportunity to tweak things if they need to or want to. And then if you've got any further questions about this, I just put on here a resource. So on my website, oh, I don't know, that might, hang on, let me get to here. You will see a blog link, and these last 3 posts right now, I think 5 more are going to go on tomorrow or the next day, but there are videos, and it goes from writing IEP goals to interpreting data to then taking data at home. These things are like 7 minutes long, but if you just click on my video, it will walk you through that in a little bit more detail. So that is about data. Let me move you over here so I can start the slideshow again. And we're getting through this. Okay, I just wanted to check my time because I want to leave time for questions from current slide. Okay. What if there are problems? Again, communicate, 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 document, document, document. You need to tell people. If there's problems, you've got a school team for a reason. I think you should try to address things informally, like in a meeting or by email or a telephone call rather than in an IEP meeting. So if it's something that you're like me with this phone call issue, I'll eventually call the teacher and be like, if it's like sunshine and roses without having to talk to the teacher after a few tries, then I'll probably call her and be like, okay, how can we work this out that you guys can still see each other, but not as often and not for content? You know, so, but you don't need to call an ARC meeting for that, in my opinion. If virtual learning is difficult, consider asking for parent consult or parent training, like what I'm doing with mine right now, because I think it's, stuff's hard enough. So if something is like just totally overwhelming you, then ask for a change. If you notice that you don't have instruction on a particular goal, then point that out and ask for it. If you're not getting related service help, ask for it. So there's all kinds of great stuff out there that OTs are putting out, but there's plenty that your PT can be helping you with, and that your music therapist and orientation and mobility teachers and all of those folks can help with. So ask for that. If you're not getting that, ask for it. It's very important that our kids get that. If your technology isn't working, obviously ask for new. If access to gen ed isn't being provided, ask for that. Same thing with modifications and accommodations. Now is the time to advocate gracefully, right? It's not the time to be the thorn in their sides, but it is the time to say, excuse me, may I please? Something to that effect. So one thing is, I think we can, if there's a silver line, there's lots of silver linings. One silver lining is that we're in charge right now. So if there's something that you've been wanting to try or that you've been wanting to model, do it. A big example is movement breaks. Like if you don't think that your child is getting enough of those movement breaks at school, give them to him or her and document the behavior or the attention prior to it and after it, and communicate that. You don't need to communicate it right now, but certainly the next time it comes up at an ARC, you can say, you know, I wanted to bring up movement breaks and how I see that they're in here in supplemental aids and services, but I want to talk about what we experienced during NTI. And I've got this, 4-minute video that shows some of the differences. Like something that I've always said is, why don't you do animal walks on the way to and from the carpet and to and from centers and that kind of thing? We do it at home now, and it is like my child does it at school too, but I say it in your IEP meetings all the time. And oh my gosh, it's like so easy, it's so fun. I enjoy it too, which is funny, but kind of set that example right now. You're in the driver's seat, and it's kind of fun to get to do that. Kind of like, I told you so. What if they say we're doing the best we can do? So the answer to that is that federal law, all of the federal laws still apply. And Andrew F., you've got your quote here from that most recent Supreme Court case that says the IEP doesn't have to aim for grade level advancement if that's not reasonable, but the educational program must be appropriately ambitious in light of the child's circumstances. The child's circumstances, not the circumstances regarding COVID-19. And the goals can differ, but every child should have the chance to meet challenging objectives. It's more than de minimis. And so we get more than de minimis. If you feel like you are getting the bare minimum, pardon me, then you need to advocate for that. Helpful tips. We talked about schedule and consistency. Do what you can. I mean, just know that you are awesome and you're doing a good job. Don't forget that those planned motor breaks are non-contingent. So the ones that go on your schedule are not contingent. It's not like, nope, you did a terrible job on your spelling, so you don't get Go Noodle. In fact, that means you need more Go Noodle in order to succeed at your spelling. Cosmic Kids is yoga. I think it goes too fast for me, but like, I don't want to have a heart attack trying to keep up with yoga. I don't mind sweating during yoga, but like, it's a little intense for me. Some kids like it. Animal walks, sensory paths. There's lots on Facebook about sensory paths right now, and Pinterest. I've got one drawn on our concrete right now. Heavy work. So just like push-ups against the wall, that's good, heavy work. Carrying stuff for you that's heavy, taking out the garbage, like anything that makes us feel that like groundedness is great to recenter us. Don't forget about sensory breaks, whether that's for you guys swinging or spinning or dancing, watching something calming on the iPad. There's all kinds of apps for that. All of that can help us. I find that we need more of that on Thursday and Friday. I build our crafts in for Thursday and Friday. I have bought a lot on Teachers Pay Teachers that are games. So like we play Candyland and it has first grade sight words on the cards, that kind of thing. And we do that when we're tired on Thursday and Friday. And then we need a lot more of this. But don't forget that those are non-contingent. Then you might want to do them as contingent rewards for like, okay, if you try really hard and you do all your sight words and within this 2-minute timer, then we can do a dance. That's kind of fun too. If school has a behavior plan, follow that as much as you can. Figure out your priorities, like we talked about. A lot of my kids with, or my parents with older kids are saying, I need those gen ed peers. I need that. How do I modify? Some people are saying hitting IEP goals is their important thing. And then some people are like, we're just going to learn. We're going to do science by cooking. And it's all going to happen organically. And just plan how you're going to do that. And then I've got a video on my website about focusing on the primary learning goal. So particularly with little kids, a lot of assignments for kids our kids' ages are multisensory, which is awesome. But they might have to, like, the example I give very often is, okay, so let's say it's little G's on a lily pad and we have to identify the G's. So we find capital, lowercase G's, right? We found all the G's. Great. That's the primary learning goal, finding the G's. But then we have to color all the G's green. We have to cut out all the G's. Then we have to paste the G's on the next page. And then the G's make a daisy. I don't know what they make. So all of that extra stuff is gravy. The goal, the primary learning goal on that paper was, can you find the G's? So if your teacher gives you something like that and you're like, I have a conference call, or I'm helping somebody else with organic chemistry, show them that you know where the G's are, or that you don't know where the G's are, and move on. The rest is gravy. And there is a video of that on my website with more details. I included our schedule just in case it's helpful. So we do calendar and weather. Like I said, kids are used to starting the day like that. Then we do journal, which gives us some OT. It actually has an OT goal in it. Then we do quick practice. I usually put 4 things in there, just stuff that we're doing kind of rote. We take a go noodle break at that time. Then we usually do 4 reading activities. So sight words, we do some blending, we do reading comprehension, and then I've got like lots of little kind of stuff that we read. Then we take an OT break, which is usually yoga or a sensory path if it's nice outside, something like that. Then we math or speech. We alternate them. Math is really non-preferred in my house. So we usually do 2 maths and 1 or 2 speech things with a break in between. And then we have lunch. And then I leave 2 reading assignments out for my boys when I'm working. We did it.